The explosion that tears apart Midgar's North Mako reactor is a familiar sight to anyone who's played Final Fantasy VII, but in the remake, it is the starting point for a demonstration of Square Enix's ambitions. The Scorpion Sentinel battle shown at E3 2019 may have proved that the remake is bigger, but what comes after shows how better technology and modern ideas can change and redefine old perspectives.
Okay, that was pretty cool.
During a recent hands-on with Final Fantasy VII Remake, I discovered that the escape through the streets of Sector 1 after the bombing of the reactor is a far cry from the somber sequence in the original. The explosive devastation on show feels distinctly the product of a post-9/11 world. Rather than emerging from the mission a hero, Remake asks you to consider Cloud's role as a terrorist as he picks his way through a mess of emergency service vehicles and devastated families. This change is initially jarring, but offers a different angle on the same story, which is symbolic of everything Remake is doing. This expanded scope goes beyond just making things more detailed. The second bombing run in the Sector 5 reactor also incorporates new gameplay ideas, with the opportunity to recode a manufacturing line that is assembling the area's boss, the Airbuster. Decisions here directly affect the kind of boss battle you'll face, such as reducing the amount of shells that it can fire.
So far, so good.
Changes such as these dramatically alter the story's pace. It feels odd that places which previously took 10 minutes to work through now take 3 times longer, but this extended length seems to be made up of worthwhile elements rather than filler. Sometimes that's via a new mechanical design like the Airbuster production line, or sometimes that's through entirely new areas, such as the loot-filled storage vault that can be unlocked if you have the patience to do that simultaneous button-pressing lock puzzle another handful of times. It's in the boss fights that Final Fantasy VII Remake really shows off its flair for expansion though. The Airbuster is now a multi-stage battle with cinematic presentation and more explosions than your average Marvel movie finale. It also tests the limits of Remake's combat system with a full 3-member party. The combination of action elements, command menus, and the requirement to constantly swap between characters to remain efficient is surprisingly taxing in a boss fight scenario. This is not a criticism. After Final Fantasy XV's streamlined approach, it's a real thrill to creep further and further to the edge of your seat the deeper you get into a fight. There's unrelenting pressure to be using your special abilities as they become available in order to ensure your team is consistently unleashing a barrage of high damage attacks. This means that big battles can feel mentally exhausting and test the limits of your endurance. It's almost akin to the biggest fights in a Platinum-developed game, just with a tactical rather than reflex-based approach. Back to help you deal the most damage possible are summons. Yes, summons are now available in Midgar, including Ifrit, Leviathan and Shiva. They've dramatically changed too. Summons now fight alongside you on the battlefield and can even be commanded. They cannot be called in at will though. A bar appears on the HUD and fills over time, and, when full, can be spent to call in a summon of your choosing. Taking away the on-demand nature of summons does restrict their use as a tactical tool, but this new system enhances the narrative that they are powerful entities that arrive when they believe you are in need of their gifts. Not every battle is a joy though. During Cloud's escape from the North Reactor, he faces teams of Shinra Riot Guards with shields that easily deflect sword swipes. Their leader, a beefy guy called the Huntsman, is painfully laborious to defeat. Fight these guys with a party though, and it's an entirely different story. Cloud can tank them while Tifa runs behind and uses her whirling uppercut to launch them upwards, which in turn opens them up to a salvo of shots from Barret. Party members now have many more non-magic options beyond basic attacks. Tifa, for instance, can deal big chunks of damage with moves like Dive Kick and Star Shower, or buff her basic attack stats with the Unbridled Strength ability. Many of Cloud's former limit breaks have also been turned into these standard abilities. Braver is the first one you'll get, and later you'll pick up Blade Burst, which is effectively Blade Beam. Meanwhile, Aerith has been transformed into a full-blown caster. Her primary attack sees her hurl blasts of magic rather than whack foes with her staff, and her abilities are all based around support spells, such as Soul Drain, which absorbs MP from enemies, and Lustrous Shield, which blooms a defensive barrier of magical petals. It's a dizzying array of additions and changes, enough to overwhelm and even incite just a little nervousness. Despite the experience feeling fundamentally true to Final Fantasy VII, Remake is a very different beast. There are moments when you'll expect something to happen and it won't, and what it does instead can cause confusion and a pang of disappointment. But those feelings are short-lived, because no matter how great it would have been to see those classic moments exactly replicated in modern tech, it's much more exciting to see how it's all changed. The remix presented so far seems well judged, but the most notable thing is how it all feels like the design equivalent of an entire battleship broadside salvo firing at once. This no-holds-barred approach creates the most absurdly entertaining boss fights I've fought in years, but if the correct lines aren't drawn, then the game's more somber, thoughtful moments could be distorted and lose their impact. If restraint is shown though, and what's here is representative of the quality of the whole experience, then there's little more to say than, yes, they might really have done it. If you want more Final Fantasy VII Remake, then why not check out the entire of the game's first chapter, or the new opening movie compared against the original 1997 one.